Welcome to the Books and Martinis Podcast.
I'm Priya.
And I'm Mercy.
And this is your go-to book podcast,
where we lift, empower, and spotlight authors.
Grab your martini and follow along.
And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to our podcast. I'm Priya.
And I'm Mercy. Welcome, everybody.
Cheers. Welcome to a new month. Books and Martinis. Woo!
And our very special guest. Here.
Yes, on screen we have the amazing author, Tessonja Odette, and she's coming to us straight from Seattle. So welcome, Tessonja.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're very happy to have you.
Yes, so excited about this. So Tessonja, you guys, is an author of fantasy romance, epic romantacy, and fairy tale retellings. She especially loves to write about brooding fae and the fierce women who love to hate them. When she isn't writing, she's watching cat videos, petting dogs, and having dance parties in the kitchen with her daughter, or pursuing her many creative hobbies. In her books, you'll find enemies to lovers, witty banter, cozy vibes, and a delicious dash of steam. We are talking about this amazing book, Rivalry of Hearts. It's about two rival writers, one prestigious publishing contract, and a bargain of hearts and seduction.
So the first thing we want to know is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our listeners about yourself.
So I'm Tessonja Odette, and I am an author living in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle-ish area. And I'm just a full-time author. I started writing more on the epic fantasy side of things, and then I slowly started diving into fae, and then from fae, things just really took off. I have 3 series set in the same fae world now, and I have a couple other series as well, but that's the series that really, I feel like, kind of launched my career. And when people read one of my books, they want to usually read the other series set in the same fae realm. So I've just been deep diving into fae for the past few years. And even in that, I write from a spectrum of an epic fantasy trilogy, and then fairy tale retellings, and then over to cozy, spicy, adult fantasy romcom. So I have a whole range of in this one genre. I have a range of the moods that I write, and I am a mood reader, so I'm also a mood writer. I just like to. Sometimes I want to write things that are a little bit darker. Sometimes I want things that are really fluffy. And lately I've been really liking writing spicier books. So my books have kind of gotten a little bit spicier and spicier as we go along, with the FLINGS and CORSET strings being the spiciest one. Yeah, I'm just loving the books that I'm writing and getting to explore the different worlds and types of stories that I want to tell.
You write so beautifully and so organically. I love the way that everything just flows so smoothly.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
And this book especially was definitely spicy. And the way you wrote in the spice was it was perfect. 5 martinis. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write it? We're talking about coziness and spice.
Yes.
Yeah, so this book, when I thought about this book, I was currently writing a different one. I was writing the 5th book in my Entangled with Fae series, which is called A Dream So Wicked. And even though I loved that book, writing that book was hard. Some of my books are just easy and some of them are hard, and it ends up having nothing to do with how they're received. My readers tend to like them no matter what. So I've gotten to learn that just because I'm having a hard time writing a book doesn't mean it's going to be bad, but still I needed a little bit of a distraction to just let my mind play with a different story. And I didn't write another story, but I did let myself daydream. And so while I was letting myself daydream, I was just thinking about my world in general. And the first book in the Entangled with Fae series is called Curse of the Wolf King. And in it, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The main character, Gemma, she is a bookworm, like the classic bookish Belle character. But in this one, she loves smutty romance. So that's her thing. She loves reading smutty romance. Her favorite author, I actually don't name the author in that book, but So she's a romance author, and I was just daydreaming about her. I was like, how fun would it be if Gemma's favorite author like got to have an adventure? Like, what's this character about? And I just started thinking about it, like, well, she's probably from, she's from like the human continent. She's not from Fairway. And so I was thinking about what it would be like if she went to visit Fairway, and how funny would it be if she comes to visit and she actually gets to experience a romance like the one she writes about, and it turns out she's actually not that experienced in the like smutty romance. She's just very imaginative, and it really took off from there. And from that I was like, okay, well, wouldn't it be hilarious if she had to be like stuck in a like a book tour with a rival author who they have a really bad first impression, and they start this first impression where he calls her book smut and drivel to her face, not knowing she was there. So yeah, that was like,
and this is how Edwina was born.
That's how that whole scene like kind of came to me at once, and I was like, and that's like one of the first scenes in the book. Like it actually developed like in my imagination there.
That's it. This is where.
And so like that, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds so fun. And so I was working on that like in my imagination for probably I think like a whole year before I actually got to write it, because I had some other books I'd committed to writing. So it was a big treat for me to finally get to write that book. But yeah, it was inspired by just my like musing on other books that I'd written, and like how fun would this character be? But yeah, it was really fun to come up with that story, and I just let myself play because it was the first book that I'd written in a long time, in 5 books, that wasn't a fairy tale retelling. And as much as I love fairy tale retellings, there are certain constraints that can make me feel tied down, where I can't just turn it into this completely different wacky story. There's certain things I need to stick to make it a fairy tale retelling. But this one, I'm like, we're going to do whatever I want. We're going to have fun. It's going to be ridiculous. We're going to have some really raunchy banter and humor. And like, I'm going to make it a rom-com plot, the same kind of plot you'd find in a contemporary romance, but just put it in a fae world. So that was what I wanted to do, and I was so excited I got to do it.
And you killed it. Yeah, which I was just going to ask you, how long did it take you to craft the story? But you said it took you about a year. Would you say in that year you actually were able to write this whole story?
No, that's just the time that I kind of had it playing around in my head. And anytime I would think of something that was funny, I would just write it down in my notes. Like I have my little notes thing on my phone. So I didn't let myself plot it, because I have a very specific schedule of how I write. I usually plot a book in 2 weeks. So once I've finished wrapping up the previous book, the book has released, I've marketed it, and I can switch my brain around. Then I start plotting, and I usually plot a book in about 2 weeks, and then I draft it for the next about 3 months, and then I go through the editing process, which takes like another month. So for me, it's about 4-ish months to complete a book, and then I try to take some time off to promote the book. And I'm actually trying to make that time a little bit longer, because I don't really like the constant churn. And I think my readers will forgive me if I take a little bit more time. So I'm actually, even though I have that very specific schedule, it's really easy for me, like, okay, I can fit in this book, and this book. I'm like, let's give me a break. Let's give me more breaks. Time. Yeah. So I do like that. I can imagine that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's hard, because they just keep coming to you. All the stories.
Yeah, a lot of times I will know like the next 2 or 3 books I want to write. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when this next book comes around? I actually have to think about what I want to write. But yeah, for that one, I knew what I wanted to write. And that's this year I have the same thing, where I know like the next 3 books I'm going to write. And so instead of trying to really cram them into my year, I'm like, let's really stretch it out.
Good for you.
I can overwork myself. I can get a bit addicted, because I do really like the process of writing.
Yeah. How did you get into writing? Was there something from when you were little that happened that inspired you to be a writer, or did it happen organically? Are you a full-time writer, or how are you balancing life?
So I did always write. I loved writing stories ever since I was little, and I would always daydream about things that I like. If there's a book, I'm like, oh, but like they never really went into the backstory of that character. Like, what was that character's motives? I remember thinking that about the Little Mermaid, like Ursula. I was always like, but what's her motive? And I was like, obviously she's King Triton's ex-lover, And this was me being a kid and being like, obviously, like there's got to be more to it. And if anyone has read Kiss of the Selkie, you will see that I did put this whole fantasy that I made up when I was a kid, when Little Mermaid first came out. I did weave that backstory into Kiss of the Selkie, which is a Little Mermaid retelling. But I would do that a lot, where I would a media, yeah, or like a media would come out, and I'd be like, wait a minute, but I want to know about this, or like, why did this happen, or like, what was that villain's motivation? Or I would like I wish that had more romance or whatever. And so I was always imagining things like that. And I did write my first full-length novel when I was 18. So I am 41, I think I'm 41. I never remember. I don't even want to count anymore. So that was over 20 years ago that I wrote my first novel. But I did not publish it for a very long time. Things were a lot harder back then to be an author in general. There just wasn't a lot of ways to connect. The internet wasn't the way it is now. Like you had to do these things in person, and you had to there really wasn't like a big indie author. Yeah, it was a lot different back then. So I was really discouraged and not really feeling like I had like what it took. So it took quite like another 15 years until I realized that I could connect with other authors and I could like make this writing thing happen. And so I did finally publish that book. I've since unpublished it and rewritten it because I did not find my first series to be my best work. And once I started writing more, I was like, you know what? I'm going back because I can make that first series my best work. So yeah, it was a journey. And then I started being full-time in 2020. So I've been a full-time author ever since late 2020. Yeah, I've been a full-time author ever since. So it's kind of like, it feels like an inevitable thing, but it did take some work and it did take a lot of self-doubt to get over. And just, a lot of things to figure out. It's hard to do it when you're alone, but the way the world is now, it's easier to connect with people across the country, whereas I might not have been able to have that support before. So knowing that there are other authors going through the same thing I was going through, and knowing that it's hard for everyone, not just me, that's what I needed to get to the next step. Yeah.
Good for you. So COVID actually helped you with that because you had all that time.
Yeah, it did. And I think the books I was writing, which that was the year I started my very first Fae series, the Fair Isle trilogy. And I think it was just what a lot of readers were wanting at the time, like the escape. And I was like, I've got an escape. I've got Fae. I've got some, some brooding Fae love interest
you were
over here.
In the right place at the right time. Good
so
for you.
I think that did help me.
And I have a question for you. How about, of all the characters you've written, because that's a lot of character development there, who's been your favorite character of all time?
My favorite character, Edwina from A Rivalry of Hearts, the book we're talking about.
Really?
She is, she's my favorite. She's probably tied with Daphne, which I won't talk about too much because she's the character
coming up.
book 2. Yeah, but she ended up, Daphne and Edwina are probably, they are kind of like two sides to me that I really let myself explore in like a way that felt like really kind of scary and vulnerable. So yeah, those characters are the most like me and the most that I felt like I was just putting myself on the page. And I did love them, which is nice. It's nice to realize that I love a character that I'm writing about that also feels like me, because I'm like, it means I love myself. I have accepted myself, which, like, especially when you're vulnerable like that and you're writing maybe not your best qualities and realizing they still really love that character. It's therapeutic.
It is absolutely. So good for you.
What advice would you give other authors in this genre?
The first thing I would say is if you're brand new, a brand new author, I would say is get that support system. It's like I was saying, that having that support system is what helped me get to the next step, because it was validating and it was really nice having other people working toward the same goals who are in the same stage. Because I think it can be hard when you're like trying to like connect with people in a way different stage and you're like, you feel like you'll never get there. Or if you're, like having people who feel like they're on the journey, but also want to get to the next place where you want to get. It's just, you can bounce ideas off each other. You can talk about like when things seem like, oh, is the market not great right now? My sales are down. Other people are like, yeah, they're down. You're like, okay, we're not alone.
Not me.
Like, like that can feel like it just really helped a lot. So that's like my thing that I tell people. like when they're very first starting out and they really want to become an author. For established authors in the genre, I guess I would just say fall in love with the genre, because readers can tell when you're writing in a genre that you're not actually in love with. Like, we can tell when you're like, do you even like this genre? Are you making fun of me while you're writing? Like, you, especially when it comes to romance, like, we don't want you to take the tropes away that we love because you think you can do better. We want you to give us more of those. So yeah, that's my thing, especially when someone's like, oh, I'm gonna write like romance for the first time. Like, okay, make sure you love it. Make sure you love it as much as your readers do.
Right. You want to see that passion through the pages.
Yeah.
The author's passion. Yeah, I agree with you. Oh, that's beautiful.
Edwina did that in your book.
Yeah.
Well, it's a part of her.
On her tour, she was getting ideas for other books, and she was spitefully writing. We're in questionable situations in this book, so she was using the questionable situations as research.
So I wanted to ask you also, what inspires you, or how are you going about all those gorgeous book covers you have? Because they are just works of art.
Oh, thank you.
On point. 5 martinis.
Yes.
Well, for most of my dust jacket covers, which are usually also the ebook covers, I illustrate those myself.
Oh, wow.
So for the blue cover for A Rivalry of Hearts, I illustrated that myself, and then I work with one of my favorite artists, Meow Lane. She did the art for the naked hardcover, so I commissioned her to do that. I showed her like my dust jacket. I'm like, you don't have to make the characters look like mine. I just love your style. And people love those covers. So I do like that they have a branding now, because they have book 2. She did the naked hardcover for that as well. And I already have people being like, is she going to do book 3? I'm like, yeah, she's going to do the character art for book 3. And then I do the dust jacket. So this one is this is just the art print version, but this is what the cover for book 2 looks like underneath the dust jacket. Yeah, and then this is for book 1, so underneath the dust jacket.
Oh, I love it. I love it. The branding is so good, Tessonja. Like, you're doing this. Like, you're so talented.
Oh, thank you.
Real talent. And it says Crystal Moon Press. Is that yours? Is that your publisher?
Yeah, that's my indie publishing imprint. That's just my books.
No, congratulations. That's wonderful.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Gorgeous.
Absolutely. Very inspiring. Very inspiring. And is there anything you'd like our listeners to know about you that we haven't asked you, that you think is important for them to know when they're reading your beautiful books?
Let's see. Well, I guess mostly that by the time you get to book 2, you will meet the character for book 3, and I do plan on releasing book 3. So that's kind of a what's on a lot of readers' minds right now. Is they're like when's book 3 gonna happen? I haven't started it yet. I actually just started writing a book, or I just finished writing a book that is, I'm keeping it a secret because publishing plans are not settled yet. So I'm not talking about that one. But I did just finish it. So I'm having a hard time switching gears back to Fairway, but I am going to start writing that one soon. So I do plan on releasing it this year. I have no pre-order because I want to make sure I know exactly when it's coming out, and I want to have the pre-order for the hardcovers, the ebooks, paperback, everything up at the same time. So the best thing to do at this point to get notified when it's going to be up for pre-order is sign up for my newsletter.
Yes. And where can they sign up for your newsletter? What's your website?
My website is TessonjaOdette.com, and there is a sign up link on there somewhere. I'm like, I don't know what the exact address is to my newsletter.
That's okay.
But you can find it there.
Yeah, share with us, and we'll make sure that we have it on the link below.
Okay.
So those that follow us and subscribe can also find it here.
Perfect.
So we'll make sure we share with everybody.
Now, I have one last fun question. If your book was to be turned into a streaming show, a movie, a feature film, who would you get to play your main characters, Edwina and William?
Monty and Daphne.
I'm so terrible at these questions, because I feel like all the actors that I cast, would it actually be cast because they're usually I remember them from older things, so they're not really the right age for it anymore. But I mean, a younger Henry Cavill would be great for William. I really love his name is fled my mind, but I thought of the actor who plays what is even his name? The like evil vampire guy from the Vampire Diaries and the originals, one with like the blonde hair. Is his name Klaus?
I can't remember.
I don't know why I forgot his name. But yeah, that actor, I had pictured him as Monty sometimes when I was writing his character. But again, I'm like, I feel like they probably, like, the age isn't quite lighting up. I'm way in the past here with actors.
Yeah, they're going to be the dads or the grandpas in your book.
We want to thank you so much for being our guest today and our first official author interview for our new branding of Books and Martinis. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone listening and watching will have all her information and summary below. Make sure you check it out. Follow, subscribe to her content, her newsletter. Her books are beautiful, beautifully branded and beautifully written.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're absolutely beautiful, and what a beautiful book to read during the month of love for February. It's a beautiful book to pick up and share with loved ones, or just read it for some self-love, because it is a great read. So it's a great book for February, everybody.
Thank you guys for listening and watching. Make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe, and check us out on the next episode.
Absolutely. Grab your martinis and follow us. So we'll
Cheers.
talk to you later. Bye. Thank you again, Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.